everyone, we're using Photoshop to do week 1, assignment 2. We're going to create tints, shades, tones, progressing to a lighter, a darker, and then a constant value. And we're going to use the same color. This is going to be a monochromatic color exercise. And we want to make sure that we are using the color that is a pure hue at 100% saturation and brightness, because like adding white to a color of paint, reducing the saturation slider bar is like adding white. So that makes it lighter, and that is how we get tints. If we are adding black to a color, that's like reducing the brightness bar, and that's how we make shades. And when we reduce both the saturation and the brightness, we're getting a grayer kind of quality and by adding gray to the mix, and that's how we create tones. So in order for our tints to be correct and our shades to be correct, we can't have any gray in the mix. So we really need to start with a pure hue. So let's fill our first square with a pure 100% saturation brightness color. And I'm in HSB slider mode. So if you are somehow automatically in the RGB mode, make sure you click that little triangle next to the lines and switch to HSB. Also, we want to make sure our fill mode is normal and our opacity is at 100%. All right, so making tints, we want to gradually transition the color by gradually reducing the amount of saturation. And we can end in white, but then that square will disappear into the background. So I like to leave a little bit of color in the mix. So I'm going to go down 10% for every square from 100%, because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 total squares. That will give me 10% saturation for this one. So I'm going to start by changing the number to 90, and I can use my keyboard shortcut of G. Oops, sorry about that noise. G, oops, I selected the wrong color. Okay, I select the eyedropper tool, and then go to 90%, and then let me see if that works. No, it doesn't always work. Sometimes you have to do it a few times first. G works. Okay, to bring up the paint bucket tool. There we go. So I'm just gradually decreasing it by 10%. I'm going to pause the recording while I finish this row. Okay, so for my last square, I have 10%. You can leave it white if you like, but it's a nice smooth transition there. Now for the row 2, in order to produce shades, I've got to make sure there's no white in the mix. So again, that's why we want to start with that pure color and just reduce the brightness. Okay, so because I want to end in black, why don't we just actually go to black, no saturation, no brightness. We're going to end this square in black. And so because there are 9 squares and black is at 0 and this is 100, we can grow a little bit more from the color, more percentage. So instead of 10%, we can go say from 12% or 11% or 13%, something like that, in order to, oops, I did the wrong one, the wrong slider. No, don't do that. Here we go. So we're going to do it like this. Okay, here we go. That's what I want to do. So I'm going to gradually go down a little bit more than 10% until, well, maybe not that much, but 11 or 12%, so that I gradually end up at black. So I'm going to pause while I finish this row. Okay, so I gradually decreased it so that I have a smooth transition to gray, I'm sorry, to black, and clicking down, there is nothing but black in the mix or a reduction in brightness, so I end in black. Okay, so for row 3, we want to end in a tone progressing to a lighter value. So we want it to be gray, but we want it to be a lighter value. So, pick a light gray that you like and fill this square. And while I'm at it, why don't I pick a darker value, gray, for row 4, there's a darker value gray, and then for the last row, exactly middle value is going to give me a constant value, and the reason that is because when I convert the value to grayscale using Command Alt Option and the letter U, it brings up this tool, so we can actually quickly see the saturation by reducing the saturation. Right? We see that. Let me move this out of the way. Checking the value picker here with the color picker, the value is at 50% for my maximum saturated hue. See that? And here, this at 50% is consistent. So I'm going to try to, when I get to this row, work on that one to create a constant value. In the meantime, let's work on this one. We want to reduce the saturation and brightness very gradually, less aggressively than we did in these. So it's going to be a real gradual transition because we really want to get this to be a lighter value gradually. So this is going to take a little bit more finesse, and we can keep converting it to grayscale to see how it's starting to gradually transition, or if I even made, so I got one from 50 to 49 to 50. Now I've got to redo that. See what I mean? So we've got to be a little bit more careful on how we select our color reduction and saturation. So I'm going to add a little bit more white to the mix there and use less black. I think that'll give me, I'll get a little bit lighter while I have still some gray in the mix. So I'm going to keep working my way down here. I'm going to pause while I do. Okay, so what I've done is a gradual transition in color, getting it progressively grayer down to the last square. And we can look at it in grayscale. You see a very smooth transition. Now it's subtle because this is a lighter gray. We're going from 50% down to 80%, and you know, it's a gradual, smooth transition. Now for this one, we can go darker. So what we're doing is increasing the brightness, or I'm sorry, decreasing the brightness and saturation a little bit more aggressively in this one. Last one we had to do more of the saturation, very delicate transition or gradual, smaller amounts of the brightness. Here we can go a little bit more aggressively in that direction with the black, reducing the saturation and brightness a little bit more evenly, so that we end up with a darker value. So I'm going to pause while I continue. Okay, so I'm gradually getting darker, and I am getting close to the end where I'm really going to reduce the saturation and brightness. So it's still got some color in it, but it's pretty close to gray. Maybe not quite so much black, but okay, so that looks kind of close. I might need to back up a little bit and oh, let me see. Let me go back to this one. Sometimes you need to go back and adjust it a little bit. This one looks a little bit too dark, a little bit too dark. So I'm going to go back a little bit. And for this one, be a little bit less aggressive. So again, this is kind of an interesting game of going back and forth and adjusting it until, you know, the value is gradual, but also we're getting closer in value. This is at 22, that's at 21. Okay, so I'm kind of close to that. So for this one, I want to maybe a little bit less black. So I'm going to go a little bit more there, and then refill that one, and then push that last one a little bit closer to the gray. So this is a little bit more challenging in Photoshop. I can see that color got a little bit too similar. So I need to back up and do a little bit more gradually again. Okay, I retraced my steps, you know, did the, you know, deleted those squares by doing the Command Alt Option, Control Alt Option, and Z to delete those colors, and readjusted it by checking it in grayscale. And I'm down to, you know, my last one, and let's see, fill this last one, and we're going to convert to grayscale and see how close I am. If it gradually gets darker, that's just 25%, 21%. I could probably make this one just a little bit darker in value. So I'm going to push that number down just from 28% black. And, oops, hold on one second. Wrong keyboard shortcut. I want to get rid of that. There we go. Here we go. Now let's go to grayscale and see how that looks. 26, 21, 21. Well, I went a little too far, so I'm going to get my color picker, check that, Command Z to get rid of that again, and instead of 24%, I'm going to go to 27%. Again, this is a little bit of adjustment back and forth. Convert to grayscale, 26, 24, 21. Okay, I think that's a more gradual transition. So we've got tones progressing to a darker value. Again, this is like real fussy. This one is more challenging, where we have to very gradually reduce the saturation and brightness evenly to try to keep the value fixed all the way across. And this one takes a lot of back and forth. Let me check the grayscale so far. This is, move this over a little bit. This is at 50. This one looks a little bit lighter, so I've got to adjust that. That one's 49. That's closer. So again, if I overfill, if I want to adjust a color without changing it too much, I can use my quick selection tool to isolate the color and take my color picker, and I just wanted it to be just a tiny bit darker. So I'm going to go from 94 to 93% black, and oops, sorry about that, noise, fill that one, and I'm going to keep working on this until I get a fixed value. Okay, in these last few squares, the more aggressive I get with the black, I have to, even more heavily decrease the saturation of the white. So let's see how this looks. And I keep shifting it to grayscale to check the value. That looks a little bit darker. So see that? I'm kind of sticking around 49 here. So let's see, I'm going to check this color with my color picker. And okay, that was a little bit dark. So what I'm going to do is increase that or decrease the saturation a little bit. Hit delete that square and then refill it. Now I'm going to check it in grayscale again. Well, it's 48, still within 1 or 2%. It's pretty good, so I'm going to leave it at that for the moment and get that color and decrease the brightness just a little bit more and get down even lighter in value. Let's see what we got here in saturation. Let's see how that looks in grayscale. 46, a little bit darker than my last square. So I want to adjust that last one. I'm going to use my color picker to see where I am. And then, I don't want it so dark, so maybe I'm going to decrease that saturation even more. Maybe even go up to 50 or 51%. 52 is probably too much. Delete that by hitting Command Control Z. Grab G for my paint bucket. Now convert to grayscale. And 49, 50, I'm within 1 or 2 degrees. That one's a hair darker, but overall, I would say I'm looking pretty good on that. So this takes a lot of finesse, back and forth, double checking and readjusting the colors. But once you got the hang of it, it goes a little bit smoother. And if you want to just select a square to change the value a little bit or the color a little bit, you can use the quick selection tool, just tap it and that'll change and that'll select that area so that you can fill it without overfilling. I hope that helps everyone. Please let me know if you have any questions on this.